See, true power is demonstrated in not controlling someone. You can do whatever you want. It's you can't stop me. I'm going to redeem a world. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen. Whatever's going to take place, you do whatever you want. But I am going to overcome and I'm going to redeem an entire world, irregardless of what you do. That's what real power is. That's what real sovereignty is. All right, Lilo, played in the tournament today. You got first place. Come on, dog. Slaying it. Pretty fun. I didn't play as well as I wanted, but we're recording. We're recording. We're going to be dealing with open theism. You ready, my brother? We need to go play this week. We're playing, so it's going to be fun. All right. Glad to have you with me today. Love that you're here. I want to talk to you about a topic. And just really quickly, if you're new to the channel, you can go to my website, jeremiahbolich.com. We've got links to different aspects of our YouTube channel, whether it be just videos you can look up, playlist, because there's series, and certain series, are in order, so you want to jump in on that. So there's different things. You can check that out on my website, jeremiahbolich.com, and look for the YouTube tab. Love for you to follow along with our studies. So I want to talk to you in today's little video about a subject called open theism. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but actually this is one of our mailbag questions, and I've got so many to get to. I've got people like, well, are you going to answer my mailbag? I'm going to do a segment where it's just going to be a bunch of mailbags. But this one is from a student from Olivet Nazarene University, my alma mater. Yes, Olivet, love you. And they got some good things going on at Olivet. I'm thrilled. I love the direction that school is going. I can't say that for a bunch of schools, but I like what's going on at Olivet. And one of the question we have, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it's basically in their class, they're dealing with just modern theological issues that are out there. And I love to see that in the university setting. University setting should be a place where these are the things that are being taught, kind of rumored around the world today. And are they biblical? Are these theologies biblical? So one that they're going through is something we would call open theism, which is basically this idea, and it's tied in with several things, but it's this basic idea that God doesn't know the future. He doesn't know what's going to happen until we decide to do it. He doesn't know the choices that we're going to make. Okay. And it's way more complex than that, but that's basically the idea of the question that I've been asked. And we've been doing as of late, just by chance, some videos on sovereignty, the sovereignty of God. And this is one out of Acts chapter 4. Which I think is just fantastic. I might have referenced this in another video, but we're going to go through it today. And it's Acts chapter 4, basically when Peter and John are, apprehended by the temple guards. They're brought before the Sanhedrin. They're threatened. Hey, you know what we did to Jesus, and we're going to do the same thing to you unless you shut up. And Peter and John are like, whatever. They're just awesome, really aggressive. And they're like, we're not going to shut up. And it's interesting. I love this. They took note. They were astonished because of the courage that they had. This is verse 13 of chapter 4. When they saw the courage of Peter and John and realized that they were unschooled, ordinary men, they were astonished. And they took note that these men had been with Jesus. I just think that's awesome. And so they end up threatening them. In fact, when you come down to verse 21, after further threats, they let them go. They could not decide how to punish them because all the people were praising God for what had happened, this miracle. And for the man who was miraculously healed was over 40 years old. So it's just super cool. And so the subject of sovereignty, this is fundamental, old covenant, perspective of God that is the foundation of the early church that didn't go away. Let me say that again. The sovereignty of God is true. It's fundamental to God's character. God is sovereign. So the question is, what does that mean? Well, the implications of his sovereignty is nothing goes on outside of God's hand. But he's able to do that without controlling. In his sovereignty, he created beings that were able to oppose him. That's crazy. I mean, Satan and his angelic host oppose him, but he's sovereign. So even though they oppose him and he creates beings that can say no to him, he doesn't control them because we have free will. Like, God desires everyone to be saved, but there will be people in hell. So God doesn't get all of his desires met. That's something you're going to have to wrestle with. That's not an open theism statement. That's a sovereignty statement. That God is sovereign and he's in control. And what God seeks to accomplish, he's going to accomplish, but you can say no and not be a part of it. And God has created you with that kind of, and angelic beings, apparently. He's created us with that kind of authority, that kind of choice ability to say no to God. And so God, in his sovereignty, has calculated into his plan even our no's for the betterment of his plan. Okay, now how would you talk about that from a scriptural perspective? So when you come into Acts chapter 4, and I don't want to ramble on, I just want to make this as easy to understand as possible. When you come in Acts chapter 4, beginning at verse 23, we're not going to read they're not going to put any of this up there, but basically Peter and John are, they're dismissed by the Sanhedrin. They come back and they report everything that the chief priests and the elders have said to them. And they just erupt in this prayer and praise section. Not only Peter and John, but all of the group where they went back and reported that kind of the elements of the early church group, wherever they went. I butchered that, but they went back to that place. And then they prophesy. Then they declare this. And we're going to begin in verse 25 and 26. And we're going to look at verses 25 through 27. Here's it. And Leland, throw this up on the screen, buddy. So verse 25 reads, "You spoke by the Holy Spirit through the mouth of your servant, our father David. Why do the nations rage and the people plot in vain?" This is what God is saying. He said this through the mouth of David, put it in the heart of David, and David prophesied it. Okay, so this is what God is saying. He's looking down at the people who oppose him, and they're like, what? I'm God, is what he's saying. I'm sovereign. Why would you oppose me? Listen to what he says. Why do the nations rage and the people plot in vain? The kings of the earth take their stand, and the rulers gather together against the Lord and against his anointed one. Okay? Why would you do this? And then verse 27 indeed means this is what that looks like. That is a passage of scripture that David prophesied. God revealed it. Like this is the question in God's heart. It's about what's going to happen in the future. And it happened, to Jesus in their day. So they're recounting this. Okay, they're looking at this old covenant passage saying, wow, this actually took place. And then verse 27, indeed, Herod and Pontius Pilate met together with the Gentiles and the people of Israel in this city to conspire against your holy servant whom you anointed. So basically, Herod, Pontius Pilate, the Gentiles, and the people of Israel, they got together and they conspired against Jesus, ultimately nailing him to a cross. He dies and they threw him in a grave. That's basically what happened. Verse 28, look, they did what your power and will had decided beforehand should happen. Put that together. So Herod, Pontius Pilate, okay, the Gentiles and the people of Israel, they did what your power and will had decided beforehand should happen. And you're like, hold on. God decided beforehand that they should do this? Well, how is that fair? Here's the deal. Here's how this works. God didn't make them do it. He foresaw what they were going to do. Here's how this worked. God comes and says, I'm going to redeem an entire world. And the generation that God chose for Jesus to come to save a world, he knew that generation as they did. He saw in advance what they're like. He stands outside of time and he's able to look at that and see their response of what they're going to do. And they're going to say, no, you're not going to redeem an entire world. God's like, yeah, I am. In fact, I'm going to come in helpless. I'm going to be born. I'm going to send my one and only son. Okay. He's going to enter into the womb of a woman named Mary. He's going to be born totally helpless he's going to live as a peaceful, a peaceful lamb, defenseless. He's going to come and he's going to be guided by the Spirit, and he's literally going to offer himself to redeem an entire world. Doesn't go into all the details of what that looks like. And this generation says, no, that's not going to happen. We're not going to do it. We're not going to get in on that. In fact, if you come helpless, we'll kill you. God's like, hey, do whatever you want to do, but I'm going to redeem a world. They're like, no, you're not. Well, now you do a cross. God says, do what you're going to do. And so he comes, lives his life, and literally the Father just guides him, leads him out of all these circumstances, and just protects him all through this, leads him right to the point where the leaders of Israel, Herod and Pontius Pilate, the Gentiles, all this group, they meet together, they capture Jesus, they nail him to a cross and put him in a grave. And God takes all of those actions and incorporates those in the redemptive plan to redeem an entire world, which he'd been talking about for a long time in the Old Covenant, like all the way back to Isaiah, 500, 600. He knew it from before the foundation of the world. Paul says, Jesus was crucified, was slain before the foundations of the world. And so literally, God took what they were going to do and he incorporated it. And they said, we'll kill you. He's like, go ahead and kill me. And then he raised Jesus out of the grave to never see death again. The best way I can say it is this. The sovereignty of God is not determined by power and might and control and manipulation and God forcing his will. The sovereignty of God, the power and the wonder of God is best demonstrated by you can do whatever you want, but I'm going to redeem a world. My power and my authority and my wonder and my sovereignty cannot be challenged. You can do whatever you want and you will not deter me in what I want to do. That's what sovereignty is. That's what power is. That's the idea. It's not, open theism is kind of a twist on that. Open theism is a kind of an unbiblical perspective that God doesn't know what's going to happen. God knows exactly what's going to happen. He's just not going to control you. He's not going to manipulate you. See, true power is demonstrated in not controlling someone. You can do whatever you want. You can't stop me. I'm going to redeem a world. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen. Whatever's going to take place, you do whatever you want. But I am going to overcome and I'm going to redeem an entire world irregardless of what you do. That's what real power is. That's what real sovereignty is. So open theism is a twist on that. And it's just not true. The idea that God, in the Old Testament, God knew about Jesus before he ever came. So, he's able to show grace and redemption in literally providing before me, I don't want to say counter, but he provides before me and provides grace before the bonehead decisions that I make. That's how much he loves us. He doesn't manipulate. He doesn't control, doesn't take away your free will at all. You're going to do whatever you're going to do. But he's always, because he's sovereign, going to leave an opening for us to say yes to him. And he's always got our best in mind. That's the idea. That's the idea behind sovereignty. And that's what debunks open theism. Probably oversimplified open theism a little bit, but and I'm not an expert on open theism, but that's the gist of the question that was asked, and that's the gist of what I consistently hear when people bring up the topic of open theism. So I hope that helps. Stay tuned for December. We've got a lot of cool stuff coming.